Namaste and welcome to Bhoom of Bharat with Rama Kumar, founder CEO SRK Game Changers, where we bring you a new update each week on GCC. SRK Game Changers is a GCC consulting service organization providing advisory, governance, and setup services across talent, business operations, and workplace solutions. We deliver customized, high performing global capability centers that encourage artificial intelligence and digital innovation. We leverage the expensive skill talent pool and create innovative leaders of tomorrow. Our tailored workplace solutions build technology as core foundation. Example, we are pioneers and experience in setting innovation labs using artificial intelligence, ML, and RPA. Thank you, guest and audience for your encouraging remarks and the feedback on the uniqueness of our podcast and the theme we choose to discuss with our guest. Today's podcast theme, India as the next GCC capital, innovation, talent, and strategy with Tarun Sharma. Tarun Sharma is again a very, very unique guest. I mean, he's been a GCC veteran, and now with this new avatar in Yodda. I think welcome, Tarun. We are lovely to have you here on our podcast.
Thank you, Rama. It's a pleasure to be here to have this conversation with you. And thank you for thinking of me in the GCC context, because these days people only think of me in the startup context or in the elder care context. So thank you for remembering that I'm part of your ecosystem even now.
Yeah, no. Welcome once again to Bhoom of Bharat. And Tarun, for the benefits of guests, if I may request you to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Tarun Sharma, and I'm the founder CEO of Yodda. Yodda is a technology company with two unique platforms. One platform is basically for helping senior citizens, typically those whose children don't live with them. We basically provide emergency response, healthcare solutions, as well as concierge services to senior citizens. And the second platform that we have is for the safety of citizens, especially women. We have a lot of features for women safety. Before this, I was the CEO for BMC Software in India. I ran the Indian operation. I also had Ukraine under me and had the unique pleasure of running an incubator for BMC Software, which I think you'll hear a little bit about as we go through our conversation today. Prior to BMC Software, I lived in the US. I'm from Boston, and I worked with a software services company called Virtusa, prior to which I had my own startup, a company called EC Cubed in the B2B e-commerce space. And of course, today we do take e-commerce for granted, but that wasn't the case in 1996. So I've been building software now from 1991. So it's been a while as a software professional.
No, thank you so much. And I think we are looking forward to hear the unique combination which you have, like you've been involved in product innovation, incubation, and digital transformation roles across global tech firms. You just mentioned about those. So, how GCC in India evolving their innovation mindsets through the use of 5G, Gen AI platforms, or startup partnerships to become global value creators, not just cost centers? Your views on this?
Yes, I think a lot of them are well on their path, especially the ones that came in early. There's always a maturation phase, right? I think a lot of people that come into India come with the value of cost arbitrage and the fact that there is a lot of talent. So it's talent and the money that draws them in. But then eventually, I think a lot of people realize that that is just simply scratching the surface, and they very quickly come to the realization that India should be the innovation hub because they're such talented people and you're getting them at the right cost. And so I think a lot of the GCCs now, especially the mature ones that I talk to, they are well into the journey on innovation. But I also see that there are still a lot of new GCCs being set up. And I think the one advantage that the new GCCs have is that they tend to talk to the people that are experienced and learn very quickly that India is not just about cost arbitrage, but about innovation. And so, you're seeing that a lot of people are already on that journey, and they're looking to accelerate. I mean, what maybe took me 10 years to accomplish, I think that people should be able to accomplish in 5 years. So there is a lot of institutional knowledge within a lot of the GCCs that have been operating here for a while. And I think that that's the benefit the new GCCs have.
Yeah, yeah. No, I find the same thing based on our experience when we are talking, and now with the new I mean the new rules, we see US definitely
Yeah,
GCCs are going to pick up. So
yeah,
definitely there's going to be there, and India's talent pool is vast,
yeah,
and but what differentiates a strong GC is not just numbers; it's
yeah.
also the depth of skill, agility, and leadership
Exactly,
pipelines. I also see your
exactly.
experience in founding Yoda and the board roles you have. What
Yeah,
capability investment should new GCs first make relating to
yeah.
crowd, artificial intelligence, security domain expertise to compete
My
globally?
perspective, yeah, yeah. Rama, my perspective is that there is always going to be a new shiny rock. Today everybody is saying AI, agentic AI. I think, and this is a trend that we cannot take lightly, because AI is a true disruptor, and I think the GCCs will have to look at what all does AI disrupt. As an example, I was seeing a video where I think it might have been Sam Altman himself, that basically said that what 75 data engineers can do, one AI agent can do. Now that creates a risk for companies that rely on people, on billing time, right? So that creates a risk for them. On the other hand, it can be a very strong motivator for people to say, hey, let's figure out how can we use AI to actually improve our profitability. What I can do with 75 people, maybe I can do with a smaller number of people, pass the benefit to the customer and improve my profitability too. So I don't think that this is really only about cloud or AI or about 5G. I think there's always going to be some technology that is going to come in as a disruptor. And you're going to see this in horizontal sense, like AI applies to all industries, or in a vertical sense. You'll see specialization in fintech, cybersecurity, the telecom advancement. 5G is just one of them, but there may be so many others that are coming through on the 5G front. There is, of course, health tech. There are wearables. There's fintech. There is AR, VR. Meaning, there's so many different technologies that eventually you really have to figure out what is that intersection that you really have to be good at, horizontal and vertical. And I think it is best for companies to not be reactive about it. Meaning, when I ran BMC software, I had the luxury of having a few very, very talented people look into the future. So if you look at any company, right, and I'll talk about it from my days at BMC software, you have the executive organization, the executive management looking 5 years out, right? So they're saying, hey, what does cloud mean to us 5 years from now? Will data centers be there? What will happen to mainframe? And they're building a strategy which is a little bit further out. If you look at the product teams, the product management teams, they typically are looking anywhere from 12 to 18 months out. So if you ask them what are they looking at, if you look at the mergers and acquisition groups, they typically are maybe even looking very current, saying, hey, this was a competitive threat, now it's become really serious and maybe we need to acquire them. So if you look at the gap between that 18 months to 60 months, that is a gap where a lot of competitors show up or technology trends show up that will take everybody by surprise. And so my view is that I was very lucky to have an incubator that was always looking into that space between 18 months to 60 months. And a lot of our innovation came from there, products came from there, dealing with competitive threats came from there, but not a lot of GCCs have them. So if you really want to innovate, then of course you got to build a capability on something that you clearly see as a trend. But sometimes those trends may still be passing trends. I remember, again, when I ran BMC software, blockchain was really catching on, and I was a big believer that blockchain is going to disrupt a lot of things. But then, if you really look at it, what happened? I mean, not as much change happened because of blockchain as I expected. So I think what is important is to have two or three, some horizontal, some vertical, things that you're always playing around with. Maybe they're very early, but we've seen that this rate of innovation is growing fast. And so, if 2 years back you were not thinking about AI, today can you even afford not to think about AI? Matlab, in 12 months, 14 months, 18 months, you see something that just disrupts. Sometimes there are policy changes. A government makes a policy change, maybe the country in which your customers are, or maybe where your parent organization is, there is a policy change. You got to be ready for all of that. So I don't think it's one thing, to be very honest, Rama. I think you need to have three or four things that are constantly playing around with, that may not be mainstream today, will likely become mainstream tomorrow. and the one that has already become mainstream, you need to basically just make sure that there is nobody that can beat you at it, because you know everything about how to build it, how to use it, how to roll it out, how to deploy it, meaning you need to become experts in everything.
So, in fact, that's a good thing you brought about. We also say that, yes, the larger companies you look at, the Fortune 500, they already have the incubation center. They already have their, innovation labs. It's like, the nano GCCs or the mid-sized companies that we
Yeah,
say that, they
yeah,
should look forward to India and try that. What's your views
yeah.
on those?
My view is that the what you're calling nano GCCs, they're roughly about 100 to 200 people organizations. I think that that is typically how people come in, but normally when they come in with a 100 people plan, they're still thinking cost arbitrage. And I think that they should be thinking exactly the opposite. If they're saying that we're going to put 100 people in, they need to say that we're going to put 100 people in that are the experts in this one area. And I'm still going to empower them to make them do the best job they can in that particular field. But so, in other words, if you come in with a nano GCC saying that I'm going to have 20 engineers and 10 finance guys and 5 customer support guys and 2 customer success guys, and you're like diluting it, I think that that may not be the best approach. At the same time, if you're coming in saying that I'm going to come in for product innovation and I need 100 of the best engineers to build out my new platform, whatever that platform might be, then I think that that is a good way to get into it. I think a lot of people typically tend to come in through that route through an OPD partner, outsourced product development partner, a company like Global Logic or Persistent or one of these. And beyond a certain stage, so if you're really talking about 20 engineers, 25 engineers, I think it may not be worth it to go through all the hassle of setting up a company and not have enough leadership and things like that. But if you're able to get to like 100 to 200 people, sometimes that's the inflection point where you decide that you're going to spin off. And then when you do spin off, to ensure that you think about leadership first and not spread the organization too thin.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. In fact, it's a high time that all the big players are here now. The smaller players, the mid markets, should also look at
Yes.
India as a kind of a new this thing. And
Yeah.
what's your also views on, because we keep hearing that with states across India announcing GCC policies, incentive programs, and innovation park plans, what makes India genuinely ready to become the global GCC capital? What are the gaps that needed to be addressed from your perspective in infrastructure, regulation, trust, or global
I think India is doing a decent job if it's at least trying to keep up on the regulation, whether it is our DPDP policy or if you look at our intellectual property and trademarking. All of these things are very friendly to people that who want innovation to happen in India. But I think the biggest element is, and on the government side, I think the government is doing a good job, Rama. I mean, you may love them, hate them, but they're whatever they do, I think they're doing a really good job building up India's image across the world. What I wanted to say is, we have the talent, we have the ability to scale, we have the potential to learn new technologies and build new technologies, even build what is unimaginable at this point in time. So, we have, if we can, send a ship into to Mars or whatever in the cost that it takes to make a movie, definitely there is a lot of creativity here. I think the government needs to play a little bit of a better role in keeping the cities that attract talent and attract investments a little bit more maintained, thinking about things like the experience of the citizens, the experience of the visitors, the infrastructure, mobility, things like that. I'm not saying that the government has not done a good job. I think they've done a phenomenal job so far, but they still need to continue to do a little bit better.
Okay. No, no, thank you so much. And I think I always keep hearing about you that there's been a lot of focus when you were doing and setting up GCCs was on the metrics, especially.
Metrics, yeah.
So, yes, so metrics oriented culture is that you have brought about,
Yeah,
whether you're talking about, process, delivery, quality.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
what metrics do you believe are most important for measuring GCC's impact in its early years?
So one thing is that you cannot improve something that you cannot measure. So measurement of anything is extremely important. But what you measure really depends upon what are you trying to improve. So I'll give you an example of what we did at BMC. We went through 4 different phases of growth and maturity. So initially it began with innovation hub, setting up BMC as an innovation hub. This was back in 2009. And so in 2009, what was very important to us was how many patents are being filed from India, Are these global patents or local patents? How many ideas are getting generated? What is the idea to execution ratio? How many ideas got created? How many of them made it into the product as a feature? Or how many of them became a white paper? How many of them became something else? Meaning something, there was an end result to something like that. So that was what we were measuring when we were measuring innovation. On the other hand, when we had moved to the latest phase of our maturity, which was around revenue and market influence, then at that point we were really looking at how much revenue are we influencing from India, meaning which large deals closed. These were global deals. We were not talking about India deals. You know, you have a Mastercard sitting in St. Louis, but they closed the deal after they visited India, met with the engineers, saw how we were running our own operation, etc., etc., and then they closed the deal. So we said, hey, we had a role to play in that, and then we were starting to measure how much revenue were we generating from India, and we were not looking at just revenue, we were looking at net new revenue. Or when we had innovation as a key theme, and incubator was a large part of that innovation, we not only looked at how many new product ideas we came out of the incubator, we were also looking at how much revenue are you generating from the incubator. And so the products that we incubated, as an example, were contributing roughly about $100 million of net new revenue. So it was very important for us to understand that. Or if we looked at customer centricity, then we had a maniacal focus on NPS, and we were basically tracking NPS to figure out what were customers really saying about us. Would they buy again from us? Would they refer us to other people who were looking at solutions that we were building, etc., etc. So I think there is a standard set of metrics, like what is your attrition, or what is your cost CPC on average. You know, those are just regular metrics, but I think a lot of metrics have to be put in place that are dependent upon what is it that you're actually focusing on, and are you getting the results over there. And then of course we did a lot of analysis. As an example, a lot of people talk about attrition or retention in India. My view is that attrition is not a bad thing. You need to have a green zone. For me, a red signal was if you were under 10% or over 15%, that was a red flag for me. So we wanted to make sure there was some attrition also. If we had zero attrition, I would be very worried. On the other hand, we used to use a 9 box framework. And in the 9 box framework, box one were the people that had the highest potential and highest performance. In that box, I wanted 0% attrition. On the other hand, in any box where you have low potential, low performance, I wanted those people out of the organization. And so we basically actively pushed some of the people out of the organization. So if you start to look at metrics very broadly, they'll give you the wrong picture. Like if your attrition is 15%, but a lot of the attrition is coming from average people, then you might be okay with it. But if the same small attrition, 2% attrition, is coming from your top talent, that is a red flag for me. So you really have to look at metrics in context of what it is that you're trying to achieve, and where are you headed.
In fact, I really like your idea. We're talking about that you should have a measurement about the innovation. You know, what kind of a revenues are being generated, what is the value that you're adding to your shareholders. I think that's very, very important part of it. And
Yes.
and you know, if I so thank you so much for bringing that point. And Tarun, if I don't bring this point, because you are also a strategic advisor at Open Government,
Yeah.
and you're doing a lot of work on the public sector digital transformation. You're closely working on technology for public sector efficiency and transparency.
Yes.
What lessons from driving digital transformation and governance can GCC adopt, especially in
So
building trust, compliance, and citizens? You know, I would say like customer experiences for global enterprises.
I think that is a fabulous question, because we have a lot to learn from the government. When a government builds something, they build it for scale. You know, you can't have anybody left out. You know, whether it's a woman, a disabled, a poor, a rich, you know, you need to think about how are you going to roll this out, how are you going to scale, how are you going to build software, or whatever the solutions are that reach the last man standing. And then you also have to think about it in the context of citizen services. And in any company, your citizens are your employees, right? You want to figure out not just what it is that you're building for your customers and how are you rolling it out, and what are the citizen benefits. In my case, you know, when you run a company, you also have to think about the experience of everybody that touches the organization. So I used to I remember my head of facilities was a guy called Ken, and I used to talk to Ken a lot, telling him that what you're really running, BMC Software is a software company, but you are the general manager of Hotel BMC. And every day when that employee walks into the company, he's walking into a five-star hotel of which you are the GM. And what exactly are you doing to make sure that his experience is fabulous? Because if that employee walks in with that mindset that my company rolls out the red carpet for me every single time I step in the building, I'm very likely to retain them. And there is pride in that organization. The family takes pride in it. Over coffee with their friends, they talk about all the great things the company does. So I'm able to attract top talent, etc., etc. So the government does this, right? Government basically has to look at citizen services and figure out how do you remove the friction from it. So you got to build for trust. The government, citizens have to trust the government. Similarly, employees, not just employees, but your vendors, your stakeholders, all of them have to learn to trust the organization and the management team of the organization. So trust is a big element of what we can learn from them. Transparency. How are decisions made? How are policies formed? Every time that you have a policy that gets created in an opaque fashion, then trust takes a beating. People think that there is something shady going on here. So you need to learn transparency from the government. I mean, I know a lot of us don't even think about it, about these things, but you could file an RTI request for almost anything, and the government is going to give it to you, right? So similarly, do we even have those kinds of practices in organizations? Probably not. So we need to think about those kind of things. And then how do you practice inclusivity? The government cannot say I've rolled out the solution, but the solution is only for people living in metros, or I have the solution only for people that are beyond a certain income level, etc. They have to really think about inclusivity, and so should companies, especially GCCs, think about it.
Yeah. No, thank you. I like the part where you're talking about, purpose into the innovation and there's a social impact. And then also looking at policies. I think the trust is very much important. In a lot of time, what happens is that, we don't create that transparency and trust. And I will tell you that I really like this government. Okay. And, there are a lot of changes which has happened for good. So today, you're talking about GCC policy, you're talking about Uttar Pradesh, you're talking about, we're talking about Bank Karnataka, you're talking about AP, you're talking Maharashtra. Recently, I attended Rajasthan Summit where the focus was on, what is that we could do in the GCC. I mean, I would say this Wednesday I'm going to attend Haryana's, GCC summit and the policy. So yes, I do see a changes where your voice is being heard. So that's a very good, sign about this. And thank you for bringing those point up. And there's another aspect which I wanted to kind of start up check with you, and especially Tarun, that you've been part of the startup culture and living that startup I would say as a I mean, this is a new baby which you have started with
Yes.
it. So if GCC, so let me ask you a very different question. So if GCC would have been a startup, what do you feel? What were their elevator pitch in 10 seconds they should be doing?
I think that the pitch would be that the GCC is the place you come to innovate. This is the place that innovation happens, and you build or secure your future by building or investing in GCCs in India. So I think my pitch would be not at all around cost arbitrage, or to be all about innovation. It would be all about scale. In India, when we build solutions, we know how to build it for scale. We because you can see it with Aadhaar. You look at any initiative, UPI, Aadhaar. A lot of these are, even though they are domestic products, they were built in India. So we certainly know how to do those things.
Yeah, when I used to get, my clients from UK to India, so it used to be that you don't need your card, you don't need your cash. You could definitely, use, your the UPI is there, and you could be contactless and does that. So I think I would ask you now that as a part of leading the startup, you've been facing a lot of uh, different kind of customers or innovation. So anything you feel different than uniquely you want to kind of share with our crowd?
So at Yoda, we are of course doing a very different kind of work. It's a social enterprise, and I'm a social entrepreneur at heart, meaning I want to build technology solutions that can help large numbers of people. That essentially is the work maybe the government does or is trying to do. But with 1.4 billion people, it's also difficult to roll out solutions across a large masses of people. So we have two different technology platforms. We have one technology platform that is for senior citizens, and we take care of three things for them: emergency response, healthcare, as well as any services that they need from government liaison work or banking, insurance, etc. And the second platform is a citizen safety platform called Yoda Tribe, which is especially built for women, because women's safety is very close to my heart. And I think if you read the news, you realize there are lots of safety related incidents for women. So these are both the tech platforms, very, very innovative. For that matter, Rama, we got our first patent on emergency response for citizens just about 4 weeks back. So we just received our patent for that. So we are continuing to innovate, but of course I'm not doing it in a GCC context, because it's a product that we built for India, and at some point we will look at how applicable it might be for the rest of the world. But for now we are focused on India. But all the innovation that happens right here from India, and we are definitely talking about all the things that we talked about in this talk today. We are looking at trust. I cannot service citizens, senior citizens, or women if they don't trust me. My employees will not work for a startup, because obviously in a startup the demands are much larger than perhaps in more stable job roles. And so they have to trust me. We're talking about scale. We're talking about rolling out something for citizen safety. You've got 1.4 billion people in India. So whatever you do, as you roll it out across the country, the solutions and the operations need to scale. So everything that we talked about in the GCC context is equally relevant in my context of Yoda as well.
No, thank you so much, Tarun. This was really a very unique conversation, and also kind of sharing your thoughts on the leadership, how GCCs are evolving as strategic hubs and innovation, and also India is cementing its place to be a global GCC capital, and also your advisory role with open government, and brought an immense value to our audience. We really appreciate your time and wisdom in shaping the conversation on the future of GCCs.
Thank you, Rama, for having me over. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you today and get the messages out to anybody that is listening.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for this, and for the audience. Thank you for for tuning in to this special episode of Bhoom of Bharat. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights on the ideas and innovation shaping our world. If you have any thoughts or stories to share on this topic, we would love to hear from you. You could connect with me on LinkedIn, SRK Game Changers, or drop your questions on our website, srkgamechangers.com. Until next time, namaste from Bhoom of Bharat.